Hi, I'm Mark Edwards, and welcome to Musical Differences, a podcast, a conversation, a chat between friends who will discuss their musical interests, their musical obsessions, and their musical differences too. In this episode, we have Mark Smith, a Scotsman, to follow the previous episodes where we've had Englishmen, Welshmen, and Irishmen. Enjoy. Hello, welcome. This is Musical Differences, the podcast where I get to talk about musical influences, musical inspiration, musical obsessions, and sometimes musical differences too. And on this occasion, I'm talking to Mark Smith. Mark is an old business contact from about 20 years ago initially, but like most of the business contacts where I retain a long post-work relationship, we've identified perhaps early on a musical connection, and that's really what we're kind of kindred spirits in some respects, even from you can kind of absolutely. This was my first Rush 12-inch. I don't know if you remember this coming out. This was it must have been at about the Hemispheres time, I think.
It was that came
Closer
out.
to Heart. Well, actually, Farewell to Kings. It must have been. Was it?
It came out just prior to Hemispheres being released, so it was
Right.
between 78, 79, and
Yes.
I was, believe it or not, I was chatting to my wife about this the other day, and I said, you know what, I remember going, because it was the rugby game. It was Scotland Ireland, and we were talking about the rugby at the weekend, as you probably watched.
Don't want to talk about that.
When I was at the Scotland Ireland game, I went into Greyfriars Records in Edinburgh, and I picked up 2 copies of that. And there's a story around the 2 copies.
Is this recently, or
No,
you did this back in like 1977? You mean?
1978 it was.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I was 15 years old, and I picked up 2 copies. They were 99 pence each.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, that's right. It was a great value. I mean, it possibly was in the UK. I don't know whether they would have needed to do it in the US because you had rock radio over there.
Yeah.
But in the UK, because this said, it's got Bastille Day Anthem, Temples of Syrinx, and then Closer to Heart. I think it did it kind of it promoted them, it gave them. I bought it because it was good value.
Yep.
I get a lot for 99 pence. I don't remember the price of it, but I said, yeah, I bought my old version, disappeared into the mists of time. This one I bought online a few years ago as well, just to replace it. I've replaced most of the records I once had, but had lost.
Yeah, isn't it? I mean, you perhaps did the same as me. When I was in the 80s, I started a collection of CDs, and lots of different CDs. So I was replacing my old vinyl collection with CDs, and I was gradually thinking vinyl will never come back. So I was gradually getting rid of all this vinyl that I had and collecting the CDs. So you were like, you're rebuying all that kind of great stuff, all the Genesis albums, the Crimson albums, all the Rush albums. They were all on CD. And then I got to a point in the early noughties where I said, vinyl, I've got to get back to my vinyl. And I had a core collection, those 40, 50 albums. I can't part with. I couldn't part with. And I thought, I've got to go and buy myself a new turntable. So, back in 2001, I got the turntable, and then the obsession then started from there, and it's it now covers half a wall in this room, which
is wonderful. Hey, where are you? Edinburgh, or is Edinburgh near Edinburgh you live? Is it? Or?
I live 30 miles. I live between Edinburgh and St Andrews in a really old town in a place called Kirkcaldy, which is in.
I've heard of it. I don't know why you've heard. Is it famous for anything?
Well, it's if you remember Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith.
Yes.
Well, Adam was born in Kirkcaldy.
All right. Okay.
And Wealth of Nations came from here. So same as Carnegie and Dunfermline, because I think Carnegie's one of your guys.
I've been to if that was Dunfermline, I did make a trip there once from. I think I was in Edinburgh. And maybe I was there a little bit. It was a sizable taxi ride, if I remember rightly, to get to Dunfermline, and But I did go to his the little one up, one down
And
kind of
how's
house that's still there. Is it Dunfermline? No, I don't think it is Dunfermline. Is it? No.
it is Dunfermline, yeah. Because I think, did you not buy a copy of a book that was signed by, or have I got that wrong? But
I would possibly have. That was the kind of thing that I would definitely have tried to
yeah,
do, but maybe didn't get my hands on it. For a while because I was mid 90s. I picked up. I don't know if you ever come across the book Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is well basically inspired by Andrew Carnegie. So I did. I went to Dunfermline, and also in New York. I went to his original mansion
yeah,
in New York, and I've been in his library and his study, all of which is I'd read about in the book. So
uh-huh.
but that would be, we're talking there about kind of industrial differences, or say he would have been he was a billionaire of his day. I'm gonna kind of let's get some semblance to our discussion here this evening. I'm going to start with some lyrics. We'll start with some lyrics. I don't even. I'm guessing you're gonna spot this within about 4 words, actually, maybe, yeah, as to what it is. But anyway, a brief phrase from a song: begin the day with a friendly voice, a companion unobtrusive, plays that song that's so elusive, and the magic music makes your morning mood. Opening stanza from
Spirit of Radio.
Spirit of Radio, which
And what a classic tune that is.
it is. And what I wanted to try and do here, Mark, to kind of kick it off is I'm interested and intrigued as to what, not necessarily first time you remember hearing music, recorded music, you know what I mean? But have you got any, a moment from maybe your childhood, your teenage years or whatever, which is where the memory is fused with the music was a hugely integral. It might be a musical memory, but you know what I mean, something where the music was so important. Does anything come to mind? I'm just kind of interested in early musical memories.
It really does, because I think that music will take you back in time to, it might be 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, to a point in time which meant something to you. And that music then became the tapestry to your day and to your month and to your year. And I remember my brother was a big music fan. So a bit like
older or younger?
Older.
It would have to be, wouldn't it? This is perfect. Yeah. I have an older brother too. We'll get on to influences, but carry on with your story.
He came home from a record shop called Sleeves, and he put this record on an old Van de Graaff generator, German turntable that we had downstairs in my parents' house. And it was a gatefold sleeve. And I remember him opening it up, and on the front cover, it looked like a woman that was on fire. He took the record out, plunked it on the turntable, and I thought, the cover looks fantastic. It looked fantastic.
I'm intrigued. Gatefold sleeve, though, because I know a gatefold sleeve. Right?
Gatefold sleeve. This was 1975.
Okay.
And this instantly turned me on to music, and it was he put the needle on the record, and there's a lyric for you, and on came "Return to Fantasy" by a band called Uriah Heep.
Oh, jeez.
I heard this, and it was, I think it's David Byron on.
Oh, he's got what a voice. What a voice.
What a voice he had. And as soon as I heard it, I thought to myself, that is the type of music that immediately just switched me on. And I thought, I've got to listen to more of that. And it was that moment when the needle hit the record on the turntable, and I thought, and I took the sleeve, I opened it, I read all the lyrics as you did, who produced it, Mick Box on guitar, and I thought, this is the kind of music I want to listen to. So from there, it started an obsession around collecting, first of all, Uriah Heep albums, and from there, I then moved on to other genres. But that moment was.
And the stereo, you say, was it a record player or was it a stereo system? Was it, what is
It was what I would call, an inexpensive record player.
Right.
But it was. I remember, but my parents had it. It was a Vanden a Vanden Graaf or something like that, turntable or record player, because we all had records, and we were given records normally at Christmas time. So that Christmas I got Beatles. I think it was Beatles' greatest hits. It was
one of the red or blue albums in the.
No, it was a Dutch pressing.
Right.
It was a single album.
Single album with a best of type thing, though. Yeah.
It was a kind of best of blue and gold cover. Right. And I got that at Christmas because I always kind of I listened to the Beatles, and it was always good music to listen to.
Yeah.
But this stuff, when I heard this, I thought, this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to go down this road, and it's going to be.
I've got very similar recollections. I said when I ask people about that early musical memory, because one of the ones for me was my parents buying. At the time, there was a change in VAT. We used to have a little mono record player, with the arm where you could stack singles and they would pile down.
Fantastic! You used to put pennies on top of the
stylus. To destroy your records, purposefully to destroy them. But it probably created more. Somebody might have said, you get more volume. It's louder if you put 2 pence on top, which probably was the case. But I did. My parents bought. My father was a plumber, and so it was a big expense. It was a huge outlay for them. But there was an increase in VAT at the time, and on electrical goods. And this basically, if they bought this just before this increase in VAT, so they bought a Sony Music Center. So it was, one unit, stereo speakers that went up on the wall, but then a turntable, cassette player, and a tuner, a radio as well. But playing on there, the first thing we played when they unboxed it at home, and I put on How Does It Feel by Slade, the 7-inch single.
What a great tune that was.
It's beautiful song. I put that on, and I said, incredible moment for me. But similarly to yourself, I got a brother 3 years older than myself, and I also remember him early on, even before that stereo system, Brain Salad Surgery by Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
How great was that Geiger poster that you took out from the sleeve, and it was a full poster, and I loved that. That was I think it was Carnival 9 on that.
Carnival 9 is, I say, welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. It is absolutely. If I had the opportunity, I would start the Musical Differences podcast with that little intro piece there, but unfortunately, I'd never get it on YouTube, Spotify, it'd be taken down immediately. But I would start with that, and I'd end with, as I said on recent, I'd end with theme 1, which is Van der Graaf Generator's version of but it used to be the theme for Tommy Vance. Do you remember?
Tommy Vance Friday Rock Show.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, not the Dixie Dregs track. This is It's an awesome. If you've not listened to that in a while, I recommend Van der Graaf Generator theme 1, and that is spectacular. But I said, that kind of period, and my brother also, oddly enough, Uriah Heep did make a show. Uriah Heep, not big in my record collection, to the point where I think I only have one Uriah Heep album. They were the first band of any note that I saw live in 1980, which passed their, say sell by date. They're still out there now, aren't they? But
they're still doing it, yeah.
And they were in Swansea Brangwyn Hall, but my brother did introduce me to, and it's the one track in particular is Wonder World, which is if you got that album, track, and again, what was is it something by Dave Byron? He said his voice is very Ian Gillan like, by the way. I mean,
I thought Gillan, there was a little bit of. I suppose I always hark back to Geddy Lee. I just think the strength of his voice, and the tone was lower, but I think the strength of his vocal was brilliant, Dave Byrne.
Yes.
And I always remember picking up the live album from Birmingham. It was a black album, and it again double album, gatefold sleeve, opened up, and it had all the gig pictures on,
Oh,
and a little booklet on the inside. So I'd put on Gypsy, which I think was the tune for Uriah Heep. I thought, classic tune, great vocals, but Mick Box's guitar on it was just superb. So
because they practiced. I don't know if you're aware. They used to practice in the same. It wasn't a. It was some kind of women's institute building or whatever over in. I think it was Hounslow, but they used to practice in the same building as Deep Purple. So they used to listen to Deep Purple. Yeah, there was a definite connection there, and I think they were kind of similar. So I said, I Wonderworld, I can still listen to maybe once or twice a year. It's a fantastic piece of music, but I can't say I'm that drawn into any other Uriah Heep. But I'm going to have to check out Return to Fantasy. But it's not the Wizard. I thought was their big.
yeah, there was the Wizard, and then Magician's Birthday, which had the lurid red and blue sleeve.
Roger Dean cover, wasn't it?
Pardon?
Roger Dean was the artist.
Roger Dean,
for
sorry,
those
yeah.
early Yes covers. But isn't it the case? Well, actually, I know it, just from what you said. We only have to consider how important the album cover was as well. We're not even talking about the musical side of it, but what you're taking in through your. It was a complete fetishistic sensory experience, wasn't it? I mean, you know what I mean? The music that you're hearing, plus this incredible cover, extraordinary.
And that, I suppose, a lot of albums, when I was growing up, when I was younger, sort of 14, 15, I'd go into the record shops, I'd go into Sleeves, or I'd go to GI.
Oh, Greyfriars, you said, is another one.
Greyfriars.
These were your haunts in the early days then, were
Yeah.
they? You weren't brought up in Dunfermline then? Sorry, in Kilcordy. You were.
I was brought up in Birmingham, of all places, and I moved. My dad's work. They opened up were opening up a factory up in Kirkcaldy, and it was Rank Strand who did all the theatre lighting.
Right.
So my dad came up and set up the factory up in Kirkcaldy and stayed up here for 6 months while he got things kind of moving and operating, and then he brought the whole family up to Kirkcaldy.
Right. But the record shops you're on about, were they in Edinburgh or were they in Kirkcaldy as well? Is it?
No.
Is that your?
For me, the first record shop was Bruce's on the High Street in Kirkcaldy, Bruce's record store, and that would be, I'd go in and see Dave and Alec, and you'd go in and they'd say, "Listen to this," or "Have a look at this," and it was never in booths like it was perhaps,
Never in what?
Previous. Pardon?
Never in what did you say then? It was never in.
We used to have these in some of the smaller record shops. They used to have little booths that you could go.
Oh right, no, I don't remember that. Well, I'm actually saying that Virgin Music in Swansea did have, they would allow you to put headphones so you could listen. And and again another memory for me. I was listening to trialing it out before buying it. Brian Eno's Before and After Science, quite a famous album of his. Listening to that on headphones, and when I took the headphones off to pass them to a mate of mine, they had Kraftwerk Showroom Dummies playing them. It was like, my God, what is this I'm hearing? So I ended up buying the two of them. Very rare that I would even have the money to do it, because I think that was the other element. I don't know if it was the same with yourself. I mean, this is buying records was a monumental decision in many respects, because I had such a limited budget. I didn't have much money at all to buy these things, and so you had to think long and hard sometimes about what to buy. What was your first single, Mark? Let me just ask. First single that you bought?
The first single I bought was Amateur Hour by Sparks. Yeah, and I would say, I would have probably got singles gifted to me and stuff, but the one that it was my own hard-earned 35 pence. That was the single that I bought, because I wasn't a big single buyer. So it was only when something took my fancy, and I thought. Another example was in '75 as well. Come up to Christmas '75, I heard "I'm in Love with My Car," which was
Queen. B-side of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Bohemian Rhapsody. And I'm in love with my car, and I thought, I've got to buy that. And I went and I bought the single, took it home, played I'm in love with my car, and then flipped it over, and I thought, revelation.
Because I think I can see where you're coming from, because I think it might have been a double A side. because it was also, I don't know if you're aware, but it nearly destroyed Queen, from what I can tell, because Roger Taylor, the drummer, wrote that song. And I think Bohemian Rhapsody was basically Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that Brian May, or unfortunately the other guy, I can't remember the name of the bass player, John Deacon. And the way that musical royalties are paid out, it was the B side got the same as the A side.
Oh, wow.
And so Roger Taylor earned vast. Can you imagine? But basically picking up on 50% of what, and wasn't it number one in the UK? I remember being in school about like 10 or 12 weeks or something.
Yeah,
right?
it was over Christmas, and then it was relaunched twice. I think once when there was a movie that came out in the 80s that came out.
Wayne's World, not Wayne's World.
It was Wayne's World.
Wayne's World.
On the car, jumping up and down.
Absolutely. No, but I'm surprised. I think the reason why it was paid that way was because it was a double A side.
Is that right?
But it supposedly caused an awful lot of problems, as it typically does and has done in many of the bands. I believe the Byrds were badly affected also when the rest of the band found out that, I can't remember, it was
Roger
McGuinn, or all of a sudden when they found out. Listen, the Beatles were the same in as much as, but the Beatles, John Lennon and Paul McCartney probably did not know at the beginning that writing the songs was really the road to riches.
Yeah,
they were just obsessed with music, but they very quickly caught on to the point where George Harrison really was kind of pushed his songwriting. He might get one track. They were making so much money, and they loved making it. They kept the majority of money to themselves. I mean, Paul McCartney, I would say, must be worth billions of dollars nowadays. I would have thought. And same with the Rolling Stones. And yet they were still shocked this evening going through. It might have been on Facebook to see an advert from Mick Jagger. He's now selling a line of harmonicas. I mean, this can't be down to he's on his uppers. This is just down to how can I crank out another $250,000 or whatever for my 8th child, by my 3rd wife or whatever it is. But what about first album then? So we've got first single. I mean, I have to say, very impressive choice there. I think I was "'Cause I Love You" by Slade, but very quickly followed up with a rather shocking era where I bought Ernie, the Fastest Milkman in the West. And my brother basically criticized me at the kitchen table. I must have been like 9 or 10 or whatever. And he said, "You've wasted your money on that. You could buy." So the single was 50p. So it must be, a little older, or they were selling records a bit cheaper with you. 50 pence for a single. Yeah. But he said you could have a Top of the Pops album, which included Ernie, Fastest Milkman in the West, for 99p. So I went back, chopped in, gave the single back, and bought that, and was then horrified to find out that it wasn't Benny Hill.
That's why I never went for Top of the Pops albums, because I always knew it wasn't the original artist. I suppose that
you're a man of impeccable taste.
Well,
the 2112 album cover on the wall behind you basically signifies. And what's the other poster you got there? Rock Palast, is it?
This one here.
What's the other one to your other side? No, the other to your what's that?
That's Porcupine Tree live at the Royal Albert Hall. That's 14 years old now. That when I went to that gig, what a great gig that was. But if I talk you through, I suppose the influences, I was really lucky that my brother listened to all different types of music. And I suppose, a bit like yourself, he had a purple Marshall stack in the corner of a 8x8 bedroom, and a
denim jacket and long greasy hair.
Yep, with a Gibson SG in the corner. So I was heavily influenced by the stuff that he used to bring into the house.
Yes.
So
lucky you, though, don't you realise? Lucky you.
It was a gift.
You'd be a different person, even to the point, in my opinion, it might seem strange, but it's like if you see that movie Sliding Doors or whatever. But I say even down to the first single you bought. In that single, if it hadn't been that, if it had been I don't know, the Dooleys, or if it had been Shawadi Wadi, which it could have
Could have
been.
been.
I did actually show. I did the first Shawadi Wadi album again. I kind of went for that. The year after, that was a Christmas purchase for me in whatever year that was. And the year after, I went from Shawadi Wadi one year. The following year, about Bebop Deluxe Modern Music. Now, when you said
Oh,
earlier on about a woman on fire on a cover, that's what I thought you were on about Sunburst Finish. But
Sunburst
that
Finish, yeah.
wasn't a gatefold, so I thought
Gatefold,
maybe
yeah.
not. But do you know Bebop Deluxe?
Yeah, that was one of the bands that my brother introduced me to. So a bit like you, it was Drastic Plastic. It was Sunburst Finish. It was live in the Air Age, I think, which was the live album. And I just loved. I loved their look, but I also loved the style of the music as well. With Bill Nelson, the guitarist, who I thought was who is still pumping it out. Gosh, 45 years later.
I've seen him. I haven't seen him. Maybe, yeah. He used to have like Nelsonica festivals in Yorkshire, in Leeds, and I've been to a few of those. So I've had the opportunity to meet him. He hasn't aged particularly well. He's still very trendy.
Right.
But and again, musically, for me, as you say, you mentioned Drastic Plastic was probably the beginning. That's when they were kind of diverging at that point. He was into new wave.
Yeah.
Red Noise came after that.
That's right.
Remember, which was and although I had those albums, for me, and one of the questions I got here for you, which I would come to it, but I'll mention that, but it is an album that you've maybe played the most over because your musical appreciation goes back now. Then what you're talking about is 50 years, effectively. You know what I mean? Half a fucking century of music. And for me, I would say my most played album over all of that time is Modern Music by Bebop Deluxe. My brother bought Sunburst Finish. When I bought Shawadi Wadi, my brother bought Sunburst Finish, and a year later I bought Modern Music. So that was I could see it in my opinion there, but from the evolution, my purchasing decision shifting from New Faces, Shawadi Wadi, Top of the Pops type band to Bebop Deluxe, which is Bill Nelson was in some respects, a quintessential guitar hero. He's a brilliant guitarist and is a brilliant guitarist. To do that in a year, I was like yourself, man. I was a kid, as a young kid. I was listening to Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Brain Salad Surgery. I was in junior school. I must have been about 12.
I know. But I don't want to make out as if I was this muso kid in the corner, because when I bought my one single, I think after Amateur, I think I bought an Art Garfunkel, Bright Eyes.
Well, no, but I would listen again. I take my
lovely,
stunning, beautiful song. Mike Batt, but a beautiful vocal. Art Garfunkel. No, I learned to play that on the guitar and to play it. I think it's a lovely
song, and I vocally, and that I suppose that made me drift into Paul Simon and Garfunkel's, because
Simon and Garfunkel is stunning,
fabulous. I mean, Bridge Over Troubled Water. I listen to
the Boxer. I love the Boxer. I don't know if it's a greatest hit. It might actually be Bridge Over Troubled. I've got a few Garfunkel albums.
I love the live album that they did from Central Park, which I thought was just captivating. That I played that. I played that recently, about 2 weeks ago, and I purposefully took it out the sleeve, read the sleeve notes, popped it on the turntable, got myself a cup of coffee, read the Sunday papers, and listened to it from soup to nuts. It was.
I was thinking earlier about topics or questions we could kind of cover, and one of them was actually about live albums, which I've not asked before, but you've already mentioned about 4 live albums. So I'm kind of guessing you like a live album, yeah?
I do, and I suppose this links back to your previous question, which I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but
this is how we go. This is how we operate here on Musical Differences. All right, it's let's enjoy ourselves as would be if we were having a conversation at a bar, Mark.
Yeah,
which is kind of what we're doing in many
what we're
respects, but it's
doing.
a
Yeah.
virtual bar. But where were you going on this? Where live albums?
Well, on the live album side up, there's a few live albums that I've bought multiple copies of, and there's a couple of reasons for that.
Yeah.
I suppose
Like multiple. You mean CD, vinyl originally, then a CD, then another vinyl, or what?
maybe worse than that. I bought a vinyl, then another vinyl copy, then another vinyl copy, and then a CD of it, and then a digital version.
Yes.
And that we were talking earlier about turntables and the use of turntables. The first live album I bought was All the World's a Stage by Rush.
Was it really?
First live album I got. And I played that on the old German stereo system.
Vanda, whatever it is, a turntable, yeah.
So picture it. I've got the record on the turntable in the lounge. Mum's down with her hoovering around, and
lift your feet,
constantly banging into the table where the stereo was, and it just jumped.
Oh no!
And I'd be sitting there going, all I'm trying to do, Mum, is listen to music. And my mum said, all I'm trying to do is make sure that the house is clean for your dad coming home. So it was that copy got decimated. So I went out and got another.
Did you look after your records, by the way? Did you back then? I used to leave out of their covers. With my brother, I had a younger brother as well. We were all terrible.
Yeah.
So the records got ruined.
Well. Interestingly, my buddies, because we all used to listen to music together, as you probably did, went to your mate's house, up in the bedroom. You all took your records in your record bag and listened to them during the night. And my buddy just used to have them all over the floor. It was, I'd be cleaning them up and putting them into, and the cat would be there, and he'd have the record spines, and the cat would claw all the sides of the record spine. So I was a little bit anal about this kind of thing. So I cleaned my records religiously. Before they went on the turntable, they got cleaned, because I thought, if you're paying, in those days, I was paying maybe £20 for a stylus, which
you'd be happy to pay that now, wouldn't you? Yes.
Yeah, if only. But you'd pay £20 for a stylus, and I thought, I don't want to wreck the stylus. I want to get as much life out of it as I can. So I bought multiple copies of All the World's a Stage.
All the World's a Stage.
One which is the same one that my dearest mum used to make jump is still there, but would never get a chance to be played on the turntable.
Right. Okay.
My other one was I don't know if you remember the triple fold-out double albums, where the sleeve would open up and then open up again.
Well, I mean, there you might the triple. Listen, I remember buying a gatefold album just because it was gatefold. I was so keen to get a gatefold edition. Oddly enough, though, again, one of my favourite movies. I'll come to that a little bit. But which is the triple album? What have you got? Is it not Yes Songs? Is it?
Well, no, that's it was a double album, but it was a triple fold-out sleeve.
Which is?
It was All the World's a Stage. Again, it was the second copy I bought.
What's that?
Which was from I got it. I don't know if you had the same in your record shops, but you used to have an import section, which had you had imports, and then you had UK manufactured, and then you'd have European. So on the import section, you would get all these Japanese vinyls with the obi strip down the side with all the Japanese writing. And I was flicking through it, thinking that I might get a Rush copy with an obi strip, but I got a copy of All the World's a Stage with a triple fold-out sleeve.
Wow.
So it was the second copy I got.
Yeah,
and
okay.
I got another copy of just a normal gatefold. And they're all in different, being a little bit geekish, they're all on different labels.
Labels, yeah.
So you had Mercury, you had Anthem, and you had Polygram. So, I bought them for a reason. But going back to the live albums, after Made in Japan, my brother used to bring in all sorts of stuff. One that I remember brilliantly was the cover, and I'd never heard the band before, and it was Budgie, Kill 'Em. What was it?
A Budgie live album?
No, it wasn't a live album. It was a studio album, and it was Kill 'Em All. was the name of the album, followed by Squawk. And it was
It's a three-piece band. It's kind of Rush-like, and Burke Shelley was a bit, wasn't he a bass player, singing bass player?
Yeah, he was. So very, very similar three-piece, similar to Rush. But again, that's just another influence that I thought that was fantastic. But going back to live albums, I know I'm jumping about. Strangers in the Night by UFO, with Michael Schenker on lead guitar, which I thought was one of those brilliant live albums. And again, from an era, and also Live and Dangerous by Thin Lizzy.
I thought you'd like that.
I don't think, and I know it was overdubbed to death, but made out like it was a classic live album. But that was a cracker as well.
It's a great live album. Let me just grab a copy here. Have you ever? So this is an early one for me as well. My auntie and uncle used to go every year to Blackpool on for like a week's holidays on a coach tour. Do you know the type of thing where they go to Blackpool? And anyway, I think I was probably still only about 11, something like that. But played this again only a few weeks ago. I don't know if you know this album.
Slade Alive. I've got a copy sitting down there. It's a classic.
I mean, turn the lights down, get in the dark, turn this up to 11, and I think it's one of the best live albums. You'd swear you're in the room. I mean, it's a party atmosphere. That Noddy Holder, well, not only him, I have watched some videos on YouTube of them at about that time. They were a great band for getting the crowd going. You know what I mean? They pump them up. But there's some beautiful Darling Be Home Soon, Born to Be Wild on those.
The old Steppenwolf. I remember going to see them live back in
Slade.
Slade live, yeah. I saw them in 1980, I think it was. It was one of those times where you were, I'd got a bonus at where I worked at Christmas. I'd got a bonus. So it was in the days of you would write a letter and put a check in an envelope and send it across to Edinburgh to get your concert tickets. So
yes.
So I'd written letters out, and I thought there's bands that I've got to see. One was Slade, because I heard live they were one of the loudest bands, and hence probably why I wear hearing aids now.
Have you got tinnitus, or will you cover that with
tinnitus? Yeah. But I thought I got to go and see Slade, and at the same time I thought I got to go and see this Birmingham band called Judas Priest, who were playing at the Edinburgh Odeon, and it was the first concert where I actually thought the support band blew the main act off the stage.
Now that's interesting. What year was this? What year?
That was 1980.
1980. So that could, I don't know enough about. I saw Judas Priest in 1980, but at Donington. But I'm wondering, it could even be something like the Scorpions, maybe, that were supporting them.
Well, it was this small band out of London called Iron Maiden, and Paul Di'Anno was the lead singer.
Paul Di'Anno.
They came on the stage. They were first on the stage. 40-minute set. That's all they got, and they played their first album, Iron Maiden, and I left Did
they blow their... Because they would have had no lights. They would have had shit sound, effectively. As you say, playing in front of a curtain, maybe. But are you saying did they really, not just in the press, you were there? They were breathtaking, were they?
They blew them off the stage. What they did have, they had the Eddie latex
heads.
Which obviously a couple of roadies came onto the stage with these, and this is what I remember from it, with these latex heads on, and spotlights, and just showered the crowd with the spotlight. But it was that cross between punk and rock, but also being able to play their instruments really, really well. So they'd obviously honed their craft down south, playing to 8 people and 10 people in these pubs.
Remind me, that was wasn't it the NWO?
New wave, New album.
So if I saw, pardon me, if I saw Uriah Heep at Swansea Brangwyn Hall, they were the first band. About three weeks or maybe a month after that, I also saw they were headlining though. I saw Iron Maiden with Paul Di'Anno. That was he only sang on the first album, didn't he? So
First two, it was
yeah,
Maiden and then Killers.
they have kind of. I went to the gig, but they do nothing to me. I could listen to them. I can appreciate it, but I can't. Other than Run to the Hills, I don't think I know any of their tunes. And
Well, I think they drifted when Di'Anno. I think the first two albums will always be for me their best albums.
really,
And then Bruce Dickinson, who is by all accounts, he's a good singer, a good frontman. I don't think they produced the same energy and vitality that Di'Anno and Iron Maiden did. But
interesting.
yeah,
I'm the same with AC/DC. I only like Bon Scott AC/DC. I can appreciate Back in Black and things, and certain stuff that the latter band have done. But for me, I didn't see them. But say the AC/DC albums of Bon Scott, out of this world.
Yeah.
After him, I'll pass. But you're the same with Iron Maiden.
Yeah, well, I'm similar to you with AC/DC. I mean, Let There Be Rock. Another the great live album was
Great live album. If You Want Blood, is Let There Be Rock? Is Let There Be Rock not a live album? No, it's If You Want Blood, is it?
If You Want Blood, which is the one with the SG, typical rock cover, SG through the chest and blood going all over the place. But it was a great, and again, a single live album. It was a bit like Who Live at Leeds. It was just one hit and Slade Alive. It was just, turn the disc over.
Powerful, real live music back then, wasn't it?
Yeah,
where the band effectively, before big screens and before massive pyrotechnics, those bands were playing relatively small venues. As you said, the Who Live at Leeds is at Leeds University. I think it's in a student union bar.
Yeah.
The Slade one that we're talking about was a theatre in London. It wasn't actually effectively a real live gig, but small venue. But those bands had to entertain. They had to entertain the audience, not just play music. They had to make a show.
Yeah.
And I think they were great at doing it.
Yeah, I suppose that during that time, I was frantically going to as many gigs as I could possibly.
In Edinburgh, because you were very lucky then if you could do that. Swansea never had, very rare. That's why I went to see Uriah. He went to see. We got to see Gillan. I got to see Marillion. Not many bands came to Swansea. It came to Wales at all. But I'm guessing a lot would have gone. They would have gone to Scotland. So they would have either done. You mentioned Edinburgh. Was it Odeon? So that would have been your classic 1970s, 1980s music venue.
Yeah, it was the Edinburgh Odeon, and you had the Edinburgh Playhouse, and latterly you had the Ingliston, which was just outside Edinburgh, which is like a tin hut that was used for exhibitions, and it was not the greatest for sound, but I saw a good few bands there anyway. But I remember I just thinking to myself, I wanted to get tickets to go and see what I thought was one of the greatest artists in the 70s. And I'd listened to an album called Darkness on the Edge of Town and Born to Run
Springsteen
by Bruce Springsteen. And those were the days where, a lot of people had heard of him and stuff, but he'd never come to Scotland. And and he was coming to Scotland in May 1980.
Was that right? Okay. I got a mate of mine. He hasn't been on here, but he lives. He saw Springsteen in that first initial run of Hammersmith Odeon back in '77 or whatever. Was it '75? Was it? I mean, that. Oh, but you saw him in 1980 again. Still, but you like Springsteen still?
I still like him, and I went to see him. I think the difference is I went to see him at Murrayfield, and that was last year with Gail, and maybe you've got the same opinion. I think myself, well, the difference is that it's a bigger stage and you've got 60,000 people.
Yeah.
And I've still got, you might be the same, I've got a box with all my gig tickets in it.
Have you? I have, and I wish I'd kept them. You've got them all, you bastard.
I should have got them up, and I would have popped them up. But I remember
Well, can I just say we'll do another one maybe one night, and we'll have just let's go through because that I would have thought that's like looking through your it's like looking through your wedding photos, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's like it takes you all of those. How many gigs you might because you still go to a lot of gigs from what I see on
Yeah, yeah.
online. When I speak, you
I
must be doing
try.
20 gigs a year.
Yeah, yeah. I try as to get as many. What I have done, Marcus, I've not spent the time at the big venues. I'm choosing my gigs based on the venue size.
Right.
So fairly decent sized bands are coming to like the Queen's Hall that maybe holds 800 people.
Right. That's good.
So you're a lot more intimate. So I saw, if I go back a few years, 2017, 17, I think it was, I saw Stephen Wilson. I had front row tickets at the Queen's Hall, and the row had 18 seats in it.
Yeah.
And that was the front row. And the stage was 3 feet away, and it was a step onto the stage. And Guthrie Govan was playing, the guitarist, and Marco Miniman on drums, and Nicky Beggs on bass. And
interesting.
I thought I choose my venues based on one, you want to see good artists, but you also want a little bit of intimacy at the same time. So yeah,
I like. Have you ever been to what I still call Hammersmith Odeon? Have you been there?
Yeah, I went there, and I was lucky enough to get gig tickets for Stephen Wilson on the Grace for Drowning tour, and I got front row sort of balcony
again.
Front row balcony.
But front row balcony. I've been in the front balcony. It's not the same. I only like downstairs.
I'd if I can get as close to the front as I can, then I usually do it. But I was at the Hammy Odeon, and I think that again is another classic venue.
Yeah, great venue.
If I could have done Kate Bush, they're not in the biblical sense.
I did. I saw not the original tour, but I saw the one whenever it was about. Was it 6, 7, 8 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, I would have
managed to go to that. My first, if I went to see Uriah Heep in 1980, I went to see Uriah Heep, Iron Maiden. A few months after that, I would have gone to see Rainbow in Stafford, Bingley Hall, which is basically a cow shed.
Yeah.
And then I saw Rush there a number of times as well. But I also went in April of 1981. I went to see Jethro Tull at Hammersmith Odeon, and I was upstairs in the balcony there. But that was That was on the.
Is that Broadsword and the Beast?
No, it was before there was Stormwatch. So the Stormwatch, it was effectively it was the old band, Barrymore Barlow on drums, John Evans,
the real Tull,
Peg. Yeah, it was the band from Bursting Out. Now then, there's a live album.
Yes, an album.
Yeah, that was again very hugely important to me because I would say I don't know if it was the same with your friends. I had a group of pals. There were 4 of us, but we had this terrible. I don't know where it came from, but it's like he owned Rush. He owned Deep Purple. I owned Jethro Tull. He owned Black Sabbath, and you could not. If I bought a Black Sabbath album, it was like sleeping with his wife. You know what I mean? It was like no.
It's my band.
Yes, did you do that, or were you all very? Oh, I bought this, I bought that, and you're all encouraging each other. We had this very strange. We used to call anyone who bought an album that you had was called was a parasite. They were. It's a little bit like, listen, you must have had this experience where you've liked a band when nobody's known about it, and then all of a sudden, when Spirit of Radio comes on, every arsehole in school is going on about Spirit of Radio, or Emerson, Lake and Palmer when they did Fanfare for the Common. One of Marcus, one of our group, DLP was his band, and then when Fanfare for the Common went to #1, I can tell you, he was possibly in tears at times. He was devastated by the popularity.
Yeah, because you want it for yourself, and I get that. When we were growing up, we all kind of, luckily enough, a house came up for rent in the estate where we all lived, and us 4 guys, it was a 4-bedroom house. We all moved.
How old?
We were 19, 20.
Oh, wow.
So I'll if you can picture this, that we devalued the property in the whole street. On the curtains, one side of the curtain was a Confederate flag, and one was an American flag that you opened up, and there was always beer cans.
Did anybody ever mow the lawn? I can't imagine it. It would have been 4 foot high, probably grass.
We were there for a year, and we all brought our own hi-fis in, so everybody had their music system.
Jeez.
But the lovely thing about it, one of my buddies, Dave Loudon was he loved the Ian Parsons project.
Alan Parsons, not
Sorry,
Ian
Alan
Parsons.
Parsons,
I mean,
yes.
Dave Loudon, who I'm hoping you're going to give him the link to this show. He's going to be horrified that you called it the Ian Parsons project. I mean, really? Come on.
Yeah, I know, and I've got most of the albums down there.
But you got most of the albums of the Ian Parsons project, or the right?
Never heard of them. And Davey was Alan Parsons' project and Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd. Well, Alan Parsons was the producer, if you're aware. If he wasn't the producer, he was the engineer, actually. I think he may have been the producer, but he was the engineer. And let me just throw this in quickly here for yourself and for anyone else listening. If you've not been there, if you've not been to Abbey Road,
right?
Put yourself on the mailing list. You know, go onto the website, put yourself on a mailing list. Every few years, they basically open it up for like a week. You know what I mean? And you get the opportunity, very low price. You get the opportunity to go in and have a little wander around it, it is a breathtaking experience,
right?
And one that I would anyone like yourself, it's the hairs. Well, just talking about the hairs, the back of my neck kind of stand on end. So definitely something you want to do. I think he was the engineer. If not, I don't think he was a producer, but he was the engineer there at that time. I don't have an Alan Parsons project LP.
Well, I listened to sort of Turn of a Friendly Card, and I thought Dave Loudon said give it a listen to, and that I suppose that was the good thing about our group. Dave would say, listen to this, or we were killing music because we used to tape everybody's albums. So if I had the new Rush album, I used to tape it and then send it out to the guys for them to listen to it.
And we clearly weren't killing music, though, were we? If you think about it, I mean, they got it all fucking wrong, to be honest. To do tape, they should have pushed taping to people.
Well, I still have my old Nakamichi cassette deck, which and under here I've got about 150, 200 tapes, so it still gets used.
Is it what it's wired up to the system? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll play tapes.
You like tape? You like tape?
I like the feel of them. They're analog, I suppose, and CD for me I thought sound production was fabulous with CD. I thought I've got a Moon CD player, and I think the quality of the sound from it is great. Yeah. But I just like the feel of the analog tape and sticking it in, and turning it over. Yeah, Dolby BNC. No. All that kind of stuff. And I suppose I like that element of it. A bit like vinyl, that I like the sleeves and I like to read the notes. Whereas I think, music got devalued slightly when we went to CD and to streaming, because there's no physical copy that you can read to any great extent.
And I don't know the names of any tracks anymore. Whereas, as you said, you could go back to... I should do it as a little test. Actually, you could go back to we know that you and I can do this on moving pictures, for instance. So you know the track order and you know the names of the tracks. Yeah. So it's Tom Sawyer. Is it Red Barchetta or immediately after Tom Sawyer? I think it might be.
Yes, and then Limelight.
Is it? And then I don't know. I know what we got on the others. Why was he? There's Camera Eye.
There's the Camera Eye. Then it's Vital Signs. No.
Not Limelight there. Limelight, do you think is on side one?
Hold on. I'm off to my buddies at the weekend, and I always give them a gift, each of them. So this one goes to Gordy, because we were
Hey,
at
I'm coming up there one day. I've decided I got to see inside that room. All right, so I
um,
will make a trip to Kirkcaldy
we
on some occasion in the future. I don't do any work in
were
Scotland anymore, but I'll make the trip. What? So tell me, what's on the album?
first track, Tom Sawyer, Red Bar
Yes,
Chipmunk,
Red Bar Chip.
YYZ,
Yes, that's what I thought. Yeah,
YYZ,
and that's it, isn't it? Isn't that it? That's side one.
Limelight is the
Limelight
last
is
track.
on. Is the fourth track on there? I mean that
And then,
I got. Listen, you think about that as one side of an album.
yeah,
Do you know what? I don't think that could possibly. I don't think I could. I don't think that could be beaten. Hold on, what have you got there? That's not moving pictures. What have you got there? That's
I picked this up. You said you're in Toronto. I was
yes. Is that moving pictures?
moving pictures live.
Oh,
So
oh.
it was the live recording from one of their gigs. So it's an official release, and yeah, so it's a
Well,
live
that's
2011.
interesting. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
Right,
I'll
side
send you
two then
the
is a bit more ethereal, isn't it? But they say camera eye.
Witch Hunt,
Yeah.
and Vital Signs. So there's only 3 tracks on
Well,
the.
they're great. They're all great songs. But I say, but when you listen, I cannot think that you could. Although, if you think about it, say 2 opening track, well, 3 tracks. I would even say that as a first side to go from Tom Sawyer to to Red Bar Chet is one of my favourite Rush songs. You know what I mean? It's one of the. And then why is it? Why is he? Those well, all 4 of those tracks I think would regularly be played at their concerts, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
there's
Well, I was at a Rush tribute gig on
yeah, I saw it online. Yeah.
Saturday night in Ayr with Gordy. Actually, that's why I'm going to take him that album across when I see him next week. And
What are you taking to him? Sorry, what are you taking to him?
I've got a meet up with 3 guys, 3 different guys. We're all we've been together since we were kids. So Dave I've known since I was 7 years old. Gordy was my best man. Ian I've known since I was 10. So it's one of those. It's the relationship where you think, well, actually, nobody's any different to anybody else. You sit down, we chat, we chat for the whole day about. We play a bit of golf, and we chat about music. And we listen.
Multiple. It's like a quad link Stargate multiplexer. Basically, each of you is kind of shooting prism light off in. What about this? Have you been? I saw this. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Ian's first line was, "Did I ever tell you I was at Live Aid?" As his first line. Gordy is, "Did I ever tell you that I saw Led Zeppelin at Nebworth?"
I watched some of that today, actually. I saw a clip of Led Zeppelin playing Kashmir. I didn't know video existed of it, but it was 8 minutes of on Twitter. But it was Zeppelin at Nebworth. Nebworth is only about 4 miles from here, but I didn't live here at the time, so.
Because the likes of When the Levee Breaks, I was listening to Led Zeppelin 4. I don't tend to listen to Stairway to Heaven, but I like all the other tracks on that album. Just like I'll stick on Presence to listen to Achilles' Last Stand.
Achilles' Last Stand, yeah.
Which I think I thought Zeppelin were just drifting into the prog arena around about that time, which was one good for me because I didn't listen to a lot of Zeppelin, but the likes of Gordy was a big Zeppelin and a big Genesis fan. So anything that Genesis or Zeppelin did, I always got, a tape of this or a tape of that.
So you mentioned prog there. You are prog, aren't you? Isn't that? Would that be a?
My brother says, Mark, you listen to prog rock. You're never happy unless the track lasts 11 minutes. And maybe sometimes that might be.
Have you heard? Here's one for you, because I lost my hearing. You mentioned briefly earlier on. That's terrible, isn't it? I saw Dream Theater 4 times in about 2 months. I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's where my ears got screwed. I went too close to the edge. I went to the front of the stage, Manchester. Came home from that gig, went to the hotel. My ears were whistling, as they often do.
Yeah.
Didn't think anything of it. It'll go. When I went to see Iron Maiden in Brangwyn Hall, my ears were whistling at the end of that night. But my ears have never stopped whistling
Since
since, and I do regret the damage that I would have done. But it's a punishment, even from an early age. My brother would put stereo speakers. We'd have the Emerson Lake and Palmer, the bit where they've got the electronic, the drum going from left to right, right to left. You do all sorts of things with our ears. My recommendation to youngsters today: there's going to be a shitload of problems 10, 15 years from now. Everyone's got headphones on all the time, haven't they? They've got earplugs in and whatever. It's and tinnitus is not nice. How bad is yours?
Mine's is I can hear it all the time, so it's constant. I'm in bed and it wakes me up.
Does it wake you up? Is it a high pitched tone or a crackling or?
Do you remember when when TV used to go? It was the old analog. TV used to go off at night.
Yeah, white noise type thing.
That white noise, and it was a high pitch level.
Yeah, yeah.
So it impacted me that when I was listening to music in an environment like this,
yeah, I
found that I kept having to increase the treble.
Same, yeah, right, okay.
And I remember going down to the hospital. This is about 5 years ago. I went to the doctors, and the doctor referred me to the hospital. Anyway, I came out after they fitted me with the hearing aids, and I heard Birdsong for the first time.
Okay. So you lost
emotional. I just thought, this is what I've missed. So when I got home, I put on Sandy Denny.
Beautiful.
It would be just and all I did was played, vocal ranges. So Kate Bush was on, Sandy Denny was on, and I just thought, how much have I actually missed? So I then thought to myself, what I need to do is to start a wee trip down the vocal line to listen to different artists.
Right.
So stuff like Adele, Lizzie, or Lizzo, sorry, Taylor Swift, all that kind of thing, because the vocal range was slightly higher, and I found.
So your tinnitus, I mean, that's more than tinnitus. Tinnitus, though, is the high pitched tone.
Yeah.
But it sounds like what you're saying there is you'd lost a significant piece
bandwidth.
of the bandwidth. You? I mean, I've got one ear's worse than the other. This one I could rub I can't hear anything. Yeah. This one, okay, I've got headphones, but I typically can. But then I'm trying to, and it just seems odd. Both of us now spending so much money on hi-fi music systems, and the fact is our ears are fucked. Yeah. It's as if we can't really benefit. I have to sit now. I sit kind of sideways on. I don't sit front on because my right ear isn't as receptive as my left ear. So I have to take my left ear out of it a little bit and put my right ear more in.
That's really interesting you say that, because I used to do exactly the same. It was my left ear. I used to move my left ear because that seemed to pick up the higher pitch. When people were talking, then that would be better. But if you don't have, if you've not got hearing aids presently, I've got these special ones that introduce noise back into the ears.
Right.
So when the tinnitus is loud,
right,
then it introduces a noise that clips the tinnitus.
Yeah, my tinnitus has never. I can't understand why there is no solution to tinnitus. There are people that claim to have some kind of solutions to it, but for me, it doesn't. I can go to bed; it doesn't keep me awake, but I can't hear silence. That's what I miss. Is complete silence. Interesting that you mentioned you triggered me a little when you mentioned Sandy Denny there. I'm going to take you to a slightly odd subject here, but I've had the conversation with quite a few of our previous guests on the show, typically also because of an age. But I would have at my funeral, I would have Sandy Denny. I wouldn't have Sandy Denny's not going to be there, but I would have a recording of. God, now you got me. It's a Fairport Convention. Well, it could have Meat on the Ledge, but it's not Meat on the Ledge. I'm just trying to think with the other the classic Sandy Denny song. But I've got a playlist.
Yeah, that you.
Are you ahead of me here? Are you? Yeah.
I've gone through the same things, but my playlist changes every once in a while. I think.
I'm with you on that, and whenever I go to more funerals than I'd like to go to at this moment in time. But it's interesting what how integrated music is to the experience. So I've been to quite a few where they've just had one piece of music played,
Yeah.
maybe. But the last one that we went to, they had a piece of music being played when we came in. It was a Midua track, actually. When we
wow.
came in, it's a crematorium. I'm not a lover of crems,
No.
but we came in. But they do have speakers and they have an
Mhm.
amp, and I'm not sure churches don't seem to be geared up the same
No.
way. But that, and then they finished. He finished this last one. I was our neighbour, and it was a lovely Fleetwood Mac song. A very I can't give you the name of the track off the top
Songbird.
of my head.
Songbirds is one that springs to mind
It
that people have.
wasn't. No, it was a Stevie
No.
Nicks
Right.
track. I can't remember, but it was lovely, and it was. But the previous one I went was he basically when his the service ended, he had the good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, I've got which is and I've been to them before where I've been to one where they've had when he's been a cricket fan, they've had that play. Well, I'm going for All Along the Watchtower. I don't know whether that's when they come in. Hendrix.
Was
All
that
Along the
Hendrix? I was going to say
Watchtower.
Hendrix or Dylan.
No. The Hendrix is and for me, the peak of recorded music is Electric Ladyland, circa was that
Yeah,
1968, I think. That is
yeah.
that on this stereo system here
Uh-huh.
at volume. Oh, good God, it's extraordinary. But I said, and I then got Fairport Convention. If it's not Meet on the Left, what is it? Who knows where the time goes? Which is the Sandy Day. It's a
Sandy
stunning.
Denny, yeah. Gosh.
It's stunning.
She had
And
just such a beautiful voice.
but I could probably give you a. I will have a play. I would say I need. The problem is nowadays with crematorium ceremonies, they're like military precision. You get so one lot's going out, you're being paraded in, you got 15 minutes, then there's this and the other, and you're out the door. I need my guests. I want to make it available to them. So if they want to turn up in the morning, they can have like 8 hours. They can get a playlist. We'll have Bebop Deluxe. I'll have bits of modern music. I might even have Wonderworld by Uriah Heep there. I would have a little bit of Rush, a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of. But anyway.
That's what wakes are about. I think wakes are great. I was at one recently. Unfortunately, it was a young guy, and he had Fool's Gold by the Stone Roses.
I don't know, right? Oh yeah, I know. He's younger than us. He's younger. In his 40s.
A good sort of 15 years younger than us.
Right.
But he was an Ian Brown fan. Yeah. And that, Fool's Gold, I thought, you know what, actually, he was only about 40-year-old or something like that when he...
It? I'm surprised you mentioned all those female vocalists. One of the things that has kind of appeared on previous shows was I don't really have much female. I don't have the female vocalists don't play much. Don't get much airplay with me at all. I probably have a little bit of Kate Bush. I got some Fairport Convention. I love the Sandy Denny Fairport albums. I like actually some of the albums after her as well. But other than that, I don't have. You might even have Heart and things like that. Have you got I can see you go and see Pat Benatar in like 19.
Never seen Pat Benatar, but I have got a few Heart albums, and I was never a big Dreamboat Annie fan, which was sort of mid-70s album by Heart. And I was lucky enough. I managed to bag myself tickets for Queen in about 1982, 81, 82.
Well done.
And it was actually on the notice board at work. There was a guy, 2 tickets for Queen tonight, £6. And I thought, I'll take 2 tickets for £6, three quid each. And I got my buddy who could drive, because I didn't drive at the time. I got my buddy. I says, "Do you want to go?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'll come along." And it had on the ticket Queen with The Teardrop Explodes.
Right.
I thought, okay, it's that sounds reasonable. Anyway, we got to it was at the Ingliston in Edinburgh, and the lights went down. On came the support band. It wasn't Teardrop Explodes. It was Heart.
I was going to say, because there's no women in that band. It's Julian Cope. I think you might have been slightly mistaken, but it was Heart, was it?
It was Heart.
They changed the band.
And I thought the two girls in the band. I
don't know them. I know the ones. Are they? Is it any good?
The guitarist wise and vocally, fantastic. I thought they were great. It made me go out and buy half their back catalogue because they were that good. And I recently listened to a cover of Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, that they did at the American Presidential Awards or whatever. And that's the only piece I really know of them. That's I've watched.
But
they never did it for me.
Dreamboat Annie, worthwhile buying a copy and giving it, or just stream it, have a listen to it, and say,
right,
if it suits you, great. If not, then you can say, well, at least I gave it a shot. But
yeah. So have you heard? This has been my latest discovery. I don't know if you've ever come across Fish, Phish, the American band Fish.
Never.
So again, when I say to people, have you heard Fish? They think Fish, they think Marillion, they
Marillion.
think.
I was going to come back to them.
No surprise in some respects, and I saw them very early on. Market Square Heroes, I had a 12-inch, if I remember rightly. And
Grendel,
Grendel, that's right.
Which was like it was Supper's Ready. That's all it was. Somebody decided, you know what, we'll do Supper's Ready and just call it Grendel.
And he did take off. Peter Gabriel to a great degree. I mean, they were like a Genesis tribute band in some respects, weren't they? I mean, but Fish, I'd heard of them. They're kind of Grateful. Did you ever listen to the Grateful Dead?
Oh yeah.
Right. So
Garcia.
Right. So Grateful Dead in the US, kind of huge touring band. You know what I mean? Kind of going from state to state to state, and huge audiences. Fish seemed to have kind of moved into that kind of space. 4-piece band, been going. I'd heard of them in the 90s, but I hadn't really listened to them. But then again, Twitter, just before Christmas, they mentioned they'd just done a Madison Square Garden concert, New Year's Eve, and it was available in 4K online. So I'll give it a go. I'll try that out. So it's 4K, put it on the big screen through the system here, and it's very trippy, but it's absolutely fantastic. And what I'm thrilled about is they've been going for nearly 40 years. So I've got 15 studio albums and about 45 live albums to be able to kind of
black catalogue. I love finding a band and then realise they've got that longevity.
So if you're going to try, that would be the as a studio album. This one, Billy Breathes, Fish. Billy Breathes.
Billy Breathes.
Again, you'll hear it. You'll get it all on Spotify.
Yeah.
Actual availability of CDs and vinyl in the UK is very poor, but that album I think has got a lovely mix of the kind of stuff they do. But they quite often do a lot of 20-minute jams on stage. Americans have a jam bands. Is like a genre. Where they, it is all of a sudden they play a song and then it's off, which is what Rush never were in some respects. You see, I think Deep Purple made in Japan, and even Purple will say, I've seen Richie Blackmore saying that made in Japan popularized Machine Head. Machine Head came out, but it was made in Japan that effectively sent people back to Machine Head to kind of, because the tracks were things like Lazy and Smoke on the Water and Space Trucking. I don't know if I'm wondering if Made in Japan is it a live version of
a copy of that album.
But it pushed people back to that. What I always loved about Purple was the improvisation of the band, and they could kind of go off. Space Trucking would have been maybe, I don't know, 15 minutes or whatever. But Fish do it all night, every night. Brilliant light shows. If you see this concert at Madison Square Gardens, bearing in mind,
well,
about 90% of the audience are off their tits on mushrooms or no, not speed, on hallucinogenics. And then during one of the songs, a 3-headed dinosaur appears at the back of the auditorium and moves away. It could have...
That sounds like a Roger Waters gig. That.
Well, I saw Roger Waters at the O2 last year, and then I saw him at the Palladium. I saw him at the Palladium for his Dark Side of the Moon Redux. That was third row, third
Yeah.
or fourth row, smack bang in the centre. Roger Waters on the stage, and I like the Redux version. I
Yeah,
do
but
like.
do you like it? I mean, I've given it a listen to, and I was late to the party with Pink Floyd, which when you were talking about, you've got 40 years of music to listen to, I felt exactly the same with Pink Floyd, and
Right.
I didn't. They were kind of on the periphery. Somebody might put something on, but I would never really sit down and listen to an album. And I was. This takes me back to 1995, and I was watching TV, and it was a BT advert, and on the back of the BT advert, at the end of it, it says, what we've got to do is we've got to keep on talking.
Yes, I think I
And
remember the
and
ads.
I remember turning around to Gail and I said, that line, if you could cut that line and stick it on an album or on a track, it resonates with everybody, because everybody
Yes.
life is about communication.
Communication, yeah.
You've got to communicate. And then I heard the Division Bell, and that line was in the Division Bell.
Right, because it is who's the physicist, isn't it? Is that what he's saying when you got to keep on? Wasn't it Stephen Hawking, wasn't it?
Hawkins, that's exactly who it was. Yeah,
That's right.
What we've got to do is we've got to keep on talking, and with an
That's on the Division Bell, is it? Division Bell, though, is post Roger Waters, though.
That's right. Yeah, it was.
But Dave Gilmour's vocals, I think, are he's got a wonderful voice. He really has.
Yeah.
And
are
you like early? I don't like if there were three eras: Syd Barrett, then the Roger Waters, Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, The Wall. That for me is Pink Floyd, and then the stuff that came after. I did have momentary lapse of reason. I really liked it at the time, but I can't say I've had any interesting going back and listening to any of that stuff. I wanted to throw a line at you again. You mentioned that about talking. Do you know this line? What we have here is a problem with communications. I don't know if you know that. You're right. Okay, but it is also it is. Oh, we're showing our age here, aren't we? We're scratching our heads. I'm going to come up with Ian Parsons project. No, I'm not. Guns N' Roses.
I'm never going to live that one down.
No, you're not. You're not. Guns N' Roses. The problem we have here is that it's in the preamble to one of their. Is it October Rain or something?
No,
it's probably September Rain. Or November Rain. Shit. At least I didn't say April Rain or whatever. But I mean, I've just basically. I've kind of kicked myself in the head. I've done Ian Parsons project with the Guns N' Roses track, but they have that little piece. Is it from Cool Hand Luke? Is it? I didn't know it was from that.
The movie was Cool Hand Luke with.
I thought Cool Hand Luke was about pool tables, wasn't it? I always thought that piece. Well, we have here's a problem with communication. I thought it was a western that was.
No, it's when it's set in the jail, and Paul Newman doesn't want to do the stuff that the jail commissioner wants him to do, and he turns around and he says, "What we've got here is a failure to communicate," and it's just before he gets battered. Paul Newman gets battered, stuck in the cooler. So it's
interesting because I have perceived that as something to do with. I'd always envisaged it as a kind of Sam Peckinpah. Western, a kind of Clint Eastwood, good, the bad, and the ugly type Western. Yeah. But the reason I'm thinking that is because is it November Rain? You said, or is it October? Remind me, is it whatever? If I remember, the video of that may well have been Slash up on a hilltop or whatever on a end of the Grand Canyon doing a guitar solo, and there probably is, if I remember, it's all coming back to me now. There's a church. It's good, the bad, and the ugly. It's basically Sam Peckinpah, that kind of Mexican Western from back in the day, which is. We need to do another one. We could talk about The Exorcist and Death Race 2000 and Rollerball.
Oh, Death Race 2000. Rollerball was fabulous. Exorcist was Mike Oldfield, of course, which I
like. I'm a big and I would say, Michael, I've got a number of albums. I personally probably prefer Ormadorn.
That's
do you know it?
yeah. Well, I remember my brother buying that for my Christmas one year.
Oh, wow.
I was, I don't know, 13, 14. And Omadon for me, that kind of greeny cover, and it looks like it's the drizzle of rain down the front.
That's right. That's right. That's
On the
right.
front of it. I just think it's a beautiful piece of music. I think both sides.
Yes.
I think it ends with
Well,
on
Horseback
horseback.
is the
On
track.
horseback.
I think that's between side one and side two.
What is it? All right.
I think it is. As I said, but that is a beautiful piece, and but the whole album is really well done. I think Tubular Bells probably might have been a little bit rushed. It was just him. It was his first album, first time in the studio. Oddly enough, I had an interview as a young man. I might have been, I don't know, maybe 17 years old. I had an interview at the Manor Recording Studios in Oxfordshire, which is where they
Yeah,
recorded
that's what. Aye, yeah.
Bells, and everybody. I was interviewed by Hugh Padgham, who Hugh Padgham might have done. I don't know if he did a Rush album actually. He might have done, but Hugh Padgham is a very famous producer. I totally muffed the interview, in as much as I was telling him this was in Oxford, and the job was for a tape operator. Effectively, you know, the lackey, the coffee maker in the studio, in the engine, in the room.
Yeah, it's happening.
I at that time I was playing in a band back in Swansea, and I was telling them, "Oh, I'm going to go back home every weekend. You know, I'll work during the week here and every week." They didn't want a tape operator who's pissing off every weekend. They want somebody who's there, available. If you want a band on record at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're out of bed, you're in the room. So and the real tragedy is, you know, the band broke up about 3 months later, so it was just kind of all over anyway. But I do like Tubular Bells. But I really like, I say, Ormadorn. I undoubtedly will listen to more over the years, and I've got some of the other albums. I had Incantations even back in.
Oh yeah, I've got that. Yeah, it's a good album. I remember I went to see him live, 83, 84, I think it was. I can't remember what tour it was, but he released a live album after that called Exposed.
Right.
Exposed, which is a good live album. But I always remember, you might have seen it yourself when they did a TV version or a recording of Tubular Bells.
Yeah.
And I think it was it Steve Hack?
Steve Hillage. Steve Hillage. No, Stuart Hillage. Stuart Hillage, I should say. Stuart, no, it is Steve Hillage. Stuart. I like Steve Hillage too. I got quite a few. I've got half a dozen Steve Hillage albums, yeah.
Some great albums. I mean, his live album again, Live Herald, I think it's called. Live
Herald, you like?
And it had the Salmon song on it. Salmon song.
Mm-hmm. The one for me is the album is Green, and the first track on that. Again at volume.
I'm gonna have to get that out because I've got Green. I've got Motivation Radio.
Yeah, I got that. That's good. Yeah.
Is it Fish Rising?
Fish Rising. I bought some. I think I bought outtakes of Green as well recently. I'm not buying as much nowadays. The whole vinyl thing has gone crazy.
I
didn't have any vinyl for a long time, and then in about I think I was living in Welling. No, I must have been living here. So maybe 2001, something like that. We moved into this house in 2001, and I was listening to. We had like a little stereo system in the bedroom, and I had a best of Emerson, Lake and Palmer CD on. And I thought, hang on a second, Emerson, Lake and Palmer did not record this music to be listened to on little bookshelf speakers. They would have had big bastard tannoys, you know what I mean, in the studio. So I went to a local hi-fi shop around the corner from where I was working in Hartford at the time, and I said to him, I said, look, I want to replicate a 1970s
analog setup.
I got a big enough place to be able to put it in. And 2 days later, he called me up. I went in, and I had a pair of Celestion Dittons, which are basically like two 10-inch big floor-standing speakers, classic 70s speakers. The turntable and the amp, I can't even remember what they were, but it effectively gave me a vinyl system again. That was 2001.
Right.
And And I went straight over to the local Ox Farm, which at the time had plenty of vinyl records there. And I came out of there
Reasonably
with,
priced in the old days.
pictures at an exhibition. There's another live album for you.
Yeah.
Pictures at an exhibition. But Focus, one of the things that really, a great track for me is Sylvia by Focus.
Oh,
I don't
Focus,
know, you know,
yeah,
there's a,
yeah.
so, that's kind of started me off again. So I then, my idea at that point was I'm going to rebuild the collection that I had, and I'm going to try and put in place the ideal record collection. What would I want if I could have any? Because you get to a certain age, all of a sudden you can afford this shit. It's like, what would I want in a record collection? I put it together piece by piece. I've still got lots of bits and pieces missing, and I've still got lots of bits and pieces, to be honest with you, that I could probably get rid of, and I don't play. I might have bought and I never play again. But the whole thing has gone during lockdown. It
went crazy, didn't it?
Jesus.
I've now got to the point, and this is the conversation I have with Dave, Gordy, Ian, Bill, John.
These guys are your Stargate guys, are they? They're right, okay. Yeah, because he was like a cube. Light refracting out into the universe of music, every side.
All I get is we're all in these WhatsApp group, and somebody will come along and say, Ian, and say, listen to this. And you think, I've never heard it before, so it's a cup of coffee, sit myself down and listen to it. So it's great from that there's so much. I still think there's so much music out there, huge amounts of music. It's hard to filter through to get what I call the good cuts, because it's either on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, it's on Amazon, and you've got to filter a lot of the not so good stuff out. But it's great to have a group of guys that are listening to stuff and they're selecting their key new pieces of music to listen.
Right. Well, these are the guys. I've got similar. I say WhatsApp is a great app. Is a super kind of communication tool. And again, I've got the likes of Chris Tanner, Andy Nutt, Ed. As I say, I keep in touch. It's like yourself. There's certain people, and if I hear something, I go, "Oh, Ed would like this." I send him a link, whether it's Spotify or Chris Tanner likes Tidal. I had Tidal and I had Spotify, but I was spending about £60 a month on the two of them. Yeah. Which I got up and I think, well, hang on a second, I can probably put that money towards something else. So I've gone Spotify. I don't know if do you use Tidal or?
No, my brother uses Tidal. I actually download most of my music. And that is, and I store it on network servers in the house.
You're joking.
So
why?
Because sometimes it's
right. You don't want to stream. You want it. You want it in your possession. It's yours.
In my possession. So I have it all in lossless audio.
So where do you download it from? Do you pay for it, or are you downloading it on?
No, I pay for some of it. Yeah. Others, I download it, and I think, is that worth buying the album, or is it worth buying the CD, or will I just stream it? So I'm really, in the last 2 weeks, I bought 2 albums and 1 CD and 1 surround sound piece of music. So
you've got surround sound in your room there, have you? You've got like Dolby 5.1 or whatever it is.
Well, the amp I'm using at the moment is 11.1, but I only use 7 channels of it. So to start putting speakers in the roof and in the floor, it's too complicated. But generally, I use a surround setup. So on the back, I've got Castle Avon speakers. At the front, I've got Focal Lab speakers. I've got a digital amp, which is a Denon, which is what they call a 6300 inch, which means that it's all linked up to Wi-Fi, but it's sound-wise, it's gorgeous. And then I've got an analog setup with valve amp, a turntable, CD player, cassette deck, mini disc player. So I've any format.
So even on the turntable, you use a different amp.
Yeah. So I have 2 separate setups. I've got a digital setup, and then I've got an analog setup. So the analog is purely for tapes, vinyl, and predominantly it's vinyl.
It takes us all the way back to our beginnings of the conversation. We probably should start trying to wrap things up now. But
Okay.
if I think about it, you went back, you got a BMW 750 and you got a TVR and you got a digital setup and you got the analog setup. I tend to play, I've got it all on on the one. I went, as I said, I've now got Klipsch
All right. Yeah.
speakers, which are
Yeah.
big floor standing, 12-inch with a horn and a tweeter, and a
Lovely.
15-inch speaker in the back of it. I don't have a
Wow.
subwoofer. I'm thinking of getting a subwoofer. I know, because I think that'll make a big difference. My amp, I got a Luxman, I think I remember 570, whatever. The reason I got that is it's a Class A Japanese transistor amp, but it does what I like about it, because I've had a lot of Lin systems in the past. The
Yeah.
beauty with this Luxman, I can turn the treble up, I can turn the bass up, I can turn the
Oh
bass down.
wow. Yeah. So
I've got a Lin system down. I can't do anything with it at all. I got to go into a frickin' app to try and do any changes to any and which is a nightmare. And then an LP12. I've got the old Lin Sondek.
Lynn Sondek LP12. It's a classic.
It is a classic, but I'm tempted to spend a few more shekels on something new in the not too distant future. So let's think what would be a reasonable way to bring this conversation, this episode of Musical Differences, kind of to a close. We've done the Funi real music, although you didn't tell me what music would you have then at the end of days in the what if you had 3 tracks to express your life?
One would be one is going to be a Stephen Wilson track. Now there's a couple of tracks. One's Ancestral, which is off Hand Cannot Erase.
Yeah,
it's just a beautiful piece of music. I think
instrumental or vocals on that as well.
Yeah,
all right, okay.
Instrumental, and the next one, which is off the Raven album.
Right, I know that one quite well.
Raven That Refused to Sing, the actual title track.
You like that too? You're big into this guy then, aren't you? On Porcupine Tree.
It's if I segue back just slightly, if you remember back in 2005, I think 2005, you shoved a load of CDs into my hand. I think I got tickets for Rush at the NEC.
Yeah.
For you, and you said, "Look, have a listen to these CDs." One of them was Dream Theater. One of them was Stephen Wilson, and I think the third one was Anathema. I think it was.
Is that Porcupine Tree? Is that?
One
Anathema is a band. Oh, I can't remember that one. Anathema. Who are they?
Anathema. I think it was that. But the standout for me was the Porcupine Tree one, and it was Deadwing. And there's a track in it. I think it's the second track, which is Lazarus. And I'd probably choose that as one of the.
Really? I went to see them, so it kind of coming back. I went to while I was doing work with Virgin Media, where you were at the time in Birmingham. I went to see Porcupine Tree in Wolverhampton. Wolverhampton, not far from Birmingham.
Yeah.
And I went there, but it's a strange one because I went to the gig. The gig was in Wolfram Hall, but I ended up at Wolverhampton Town Hall, and there was a gig there. People with long hair and denim jackets going in. I followed everybody in. Anyway, I'm in there. I think this looks a bit odd. They're all younger than I thought they were going to be, and then fucking noise from the stage, and it was Trivium. They'd let me in. They must have thought I was a manager or something. It was a Trivium gig. Wolfram Hall was at the back of that venue, so I had to come out of there and go all the way around. So, and that was so. I think that was that period there. I've not. I've listened to that Raven album you mentioned. Again, Chris Tanner is a big one of my Stargates from down in Wales. He kind of and he's continually going on about Stephen Wilson. Stephen Wilson I see more often than not nowadays. He's an exceptional producer. And stuff I've heard from him, it's a bit like, hey, listen, the guy is taking in every piece of music that's ever been made, and he's
He's
taking
a
it.
magpie. He's a magpie. He's stealing it.
I can
from
hear that. I go,
you.
oh, it's Crosby, Stills and Nash. Up there's John Lennon there. Up there's Jethro Tull.
Absolutely, yeah. He's a musical magpie for me. Everything he does sounds absolutely original, but you just get these notes and these themes that come through, and you think, I've heard that before. He produced a Marillion album back in the 90s.
Right.
And I don't know if you've heard of a band.
Well, that's
called
early for him, isn't it? That's very early in his career.
Yeah, he did it with Steve Hogarth, and he also produced an album by Opeth.
Opeth?
Called I think it was Blackwater Park.
Oh, well.
And I think that it's the 30th anniversary of that album this year.
30th anniversary, it's crazy.
Sorry, 20th.
All right, no, it probably is the 30th. Well, I only know Opeth for, aren't they? I can't take these Cookie Monster bands, and I think Opeth are one of those, aren't they? Well, but they did a lovely version of Soldier of Fortune. I don't know if you know that song. That's a classic Deep Purple David Coverdale.
No.
David Coverdale's in good form out there nowadays too. You know, I mean, hey, listen, we could go on all night. We need to bring it to an end. We've done about an hour and 40. I think we can entertain each other forever. How long we can entertain our audience for beyond this, I don't know. I'm hoping that your Musical Stargate friends from Kilcordy, Edinburgh, Scotland Way will listen to the podcast here. And I don't know, you know, do I need to edit out the mentions of the Ian Parsons project, or can I?
Well, I think, you know what, that would be that for Dave Loudon, Alan Ewins, Gordy, and Ian. I think they would find that incredibly amusing. And
I think I like the idea of that being used as a little needle on the golf course. Well, yes, one for Ian Parsons. Ian Parsons sounds more like a golfer than he does like than a rock producer. So with that, we'll bring it to a close there, Mark. For the purposes of the recording, we might carry on for a few minutes ourselves. But I want to thank you very much. I've had a great evening. I must your room, even from the small glimpse that I have of it here, I've got to come up there one day. I've got to listen to that sound system, and we've got to go through some of those old albums of yours. But it's been a real treat for me. I hope you've enjoyed our time
I've loved it. It's been a great night.
It's been a bit of fun, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's been a bit of fun, and I'll get this up online in about a week's time. So with that, Mark Smith, thanks ever so much for joining us this evening on Musical Differences, and we'll see you again sometime soon. Until then.
Cheers, Mark. It's been a pleasure.